boarding a plane to Tuscany while I stood in a vineyard that had been in my family for 71 years. That was the part that broke something loose in me. Not the leaving, not even the lying about why they were leaving. It was the casual way my own son kissed the top of my head on the porch that morning and said, "Mom, the Cabernet block can wait a week. You've earned a break too. Just water the new plantings and we'll be back before harvest." A break. He called it a break. My name is Genevieve, and I am 71 years old. I have lived on this land outside Healdsburg, California, since I was 4 months old. When my father drove my mother home from the hospital in a Studebaker and carried me through a row of grapevines my grandfather had planted in 1953, I have buried 2 husbands in the cemetery off West Side Road. I have pruned, picked, fermented, bottled, and sold more wine than most people will drink in a lifetime. And until that Tuesday in early September, I still believed my only living child loved me more than he loved money. I want to tell you what happened because I have heard so many stories that end with the old woman crying into her apron, forgiving the children who robbed her, and dying alone with a tea kettle on the stove. That is not how mine ended. But getting there cost me something I will never get back. And I think there are women out there my age who need to hear that the cost is worth paying. Let me start with the morning they left. My son's name is Beckett. He is 44 years old, and he was born in the upstairs bedroom of this farmhouse because the doctor didn't make it in time. His wife is Tessa, 39, a woman with very white teeth and a gift for making any room feel slightly colder than it was a minute ago. Her mother, Marlene, had flown in 3 weeks earlier from Scottsdale, Arizona, supposedly because she missed her daughter. Marlene wore linen even when she was gardening, which she didn't do, and she called me Jen, the way you'd call a waitress by her name tag. The 3 of them stood on my front porch with matching luggage. Beckett had on a pale blue button-down I had ironed for him the night before because he asked, and Tessa was wearing a sundress I knew cost more than I paid the woman who helps me with bookkeeping every month. Marlene was checking her watch. "Mom," Beckett said, "the car's here. We're really sorry about the timing." "You're sorry about the timing," I repeated, just to hear how it sounded. "It's only a week. Tessa's been planning this for her mom's birthday for months." I looked at Marlene. Marlene smiled at me with her mouth only. "Genevieve, you are a saint to hold down the fort. We'll bring you back some olive oil from the place we're staying. It's a working estate. A working estate. A working estate." While I worked mine, I almost said something then. I had felt it in my chest since the night before, when I overheard Tessa on the phone in the guest room laughing about the old girl and saying, "She doesn't even know what the acreage is worth per planted vine, Diane. Beckett will handle her. He handles her fine." But I had told myself I was tired. I had told myself I had heard it wrong. I had told myself 100 lies. A tired old woman tells herself so she doesn't have to deal with what she already knows. So I let them get in that black car. I let my son hug me. I let him say, "Love you, Mom." And I said it back because I am not the kind of woman who lets her last word to her child be a cold one. The dust hadn't even settled on the gravel when my phone rang. It was Iris from next door. Iris is 68, retired from teaching biology at Healdsburg High, and the only person on this road who calls me before knocking. Her property line shares the lower irrigation ditch with mine. She has a goat named Truman. None of that matters except to tell you that when Iris said, "Honey, can you come over here right now?" I went. She had me sit on her screen porch, and she put a cup of coffee in front of me, and she did not let me drink it before she said, "Genevieve, I need to tell you something I overheard, and I have been sick about it for 2 days." What she had overheard was this. She had been walking back from her mailbox on Sunday afternoon when she came up along my fence line, and she heard voices from the other side. Tessa and Marlene. They didn't know she was there because the wisteria along the post and rail is thick this time of year. Iris said she froze because she heard her own name first, and then she heard mine, and then she heard the word appraiser. "They had a man out here Thursday," Iris said, "while you were at the dentist. I saw the truck and didn't think anything of it. He had a clipboard. They were walking him through the Cabernet block and the south slope and the equipment barn. Beckett knew about this. Genevieve, Beckett brought him. I want you to understand something. I did not gasp. I did not cry. I sat there with my coffee getting cold, and I felt the way you feel when you step off a curb you forgot was there. A small drop, just enough to jar your teeth. There's more, Iris said. There was more. Tessa had said on the other side of my fence that the listing would go up Monday of next week, that Beckett was going to handle telling Genevieve while they were in Italy, because the time difference would give her a chance to process before reacting, that Merlene had a buyer lined up in Sonoma already, a developer who wanted to subdivide the lower parcel for luxury tasting cottages, that the total ask was $4.2 million, and that Beckett's cut after his mother-in-law's finder commission would clear $2.5. $4.2 million for the land my father bled into, for the well my second husband dug by hand the summer before his stroke, for the rows my grandmother used to walk in her good shoes because she said the vines liked to see her dressed up. I said, Iris, who has the deed. She blinked at me. Honey, you do. Don't you? I want to make sure I do. I drove home and I went straight to the safe in the upstairs closet, the one Beckett doesn't know the combination to because his father changed it the year Beckett dropped out of a second college. The deed was there. So was the original 1953 plat survey. So was the trust paperwork that named Beckett as sole beneficiary upon my death. Sole beneficiary upon my death. I sat down on the floor of that closet, on a rag rug my mother braided in 1968, and I read that trust document like I was reading a stranger's mail, because I had not looked at it in 19 years, because I had signed it 3 months after my second husband died, and I was so foggy with grief, I would have signed anything Beckett's lawyer slid across the kitchen table. Beckett's lawyer. Not mine. A man named Halloran, who I now remembered had a son who married Tessa's college roommate. That is the moment, sitting on that rug, that I stopped being the woman they thought I was. I called Joelle Pruitt. Joelle is an estate attorney in Santa Rosa who handled my sister's affairs 3 years ago, and the only reason I had her number was because my sister told me, the week before she passed, if anything ever feels wrong, you call Joelle and don't call anyone else. My sister had lung cancer and she said a lot of things that last month, but that one had stuck because she'd grabbed my wrist when she said it. Joelle picked up on the second ring. I told her what Iris had told me. I told her about the trust. I told her about the lawyer Halloran and his son's wife's roommate. She was quiet for a long moment, and then she said, Genevieve, can you be in my office at 8 tomorrow morning? I can be there at 6 if you'll open the door. 8 is fine. Bring everything from that safe. I did not sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with the deed and the trust and a yellow legal pad, and I wrote down every dollar I knew was in every account, every signature card I could remember signing. Every time Beckett had asked me to just sign this real quick, Mom. It's nothing. There were more than I wanted to count. There was a line of credit against the property that I did not remember opening. There was a joint checking account he'd added himself to 4 years ago to help pay your bills if you ever got sick. There was a power of attorney document I had no memory of. Dated this spring, my hip was bad. I stopped writing around 3 in the morning and went out on the porch in my robe. The vineyard was silver in the moonlight. The new plantings my son had told me to water were 200 yards down the slope, in rows I had laid out myself in March because he was too busy to help. I stood there and I thought about my father who came home from Korea and put his army pay into this land. I thought about my grandmother in her good shoes. I thought about my second husband on his knees in the dirt with the well digger's grease on his hands. I did not cry. I want you to know that. I had cried enough for one lifetime when my husband's died, and I was not going to spend another tear on a son who was on a plane right now, drinking complimentary champagne with the woman who was selling my grandmother's vines out from under me. I went inside and I made a list. At 8 the next morning I was in Joelle Pruitt's office in a navy dress my second husband had picked out for me in 1991. Joelle is 56 years old and she has gray hair. She does not dye, and she wears reading glasses on a beaded chain. She took my paperwork, and she spread it across her conference table, and she went through it for 40 minutes without saying a word. Then she looked up at me and she said, Genevieve, I want to be careful with how I say this. You have been the subject of what I would call a slow-motion financial elder abuse. I nodded. I had known that since 3 in the morning. The good news, she said, is that almost all of it is reversible. The trust can be revoked because California law gives the settlor that right, unless the trust says otherwise, and yours doesn't say otherwise. The power of attorney can be revoked today. The joint account can be retitled today. The line of credit is going to take a little longer because we'll need to look at how it was opened, but if your signature was obtained under any kind of misrepresentation, that's a different conversation and possibly a criminal one. How long does all of it take? To make you bulletproof? 48 hours if you have the energy. I had the energy. We went to my bank that same morning. I sat across from a woman named Priya, who had been the branch manager for 11 years and who had known my second husband. I told her plainly that I needed every card associated with any account bearing my name canceled, every joint signatory removed, every authorization revoked, and a new account opened in my name only with new cards I would pick up that afternoon. Priya did not blink. She made 3 phone calls and then she walked me to a private office and she did not let me leave for 2 hours. When I came out, every card in Beckett's wallet that connected to my money was a piece of dead plastic. By the time I drove home that evening, I had a revoked trust, a revoked power of attorney, a new will, a retitled deed in a single-owner LLC I would control alone, and a frozen line of credit pending fraud review. Joelle had also walked me through filing what she called a no-contest amendment. That meant if Beckett tried to challenge any of it in court, he would automatically forfeit the small bequest I had left him out of plain habit. I want to tell you something about how I felt driving up my own gravel road that evening. The Vineyard looked different to me. It looked like mine again. I had not realized until I drove up to it that night that for 19 years some part of me had been treating it like it already belonged to Beckett, like I was a tenant on my own farm. That feeling of being a tenant on your own life is a feeling I think a lot of women my age know in their bones. I am telling you now, sister, it is a feeling you can put down. The first call came Wednesday morning at 5:47, which would have been afternoon their time. I let it ring. He left a voicemail. He sounded confused, the way he used to sound at 14 when he couldn't find his cleats and was sure I had moved them. Mom, the card got declined at the restaurant last night. Then Tessa's got declined at the hotel. They want to talk to you. Can you call the bank? Something's gone screwy. Love you. I made coffee. I watered the new plantings the way a good mother would. The second call came at 7. The third at 7:20. The fourth at 8, and on the fourth one I picked up because I had decided overnight that I wanted to hear his voice when he asked, Mom, oh my God, finally. Are you okay? Are you in the hospital? I'm in the kitchen, Beckett. The cards are all dead, every single one. Tessa's mom got hers declined too. The hotel is asking us to settle a €4,000 charge by tonight or they're going to call the police. What is happening? Did somebody hack you? No, honey. Then what? Mom, please, we are in Italy. We don't speak Italian. Tessa's mom is having a panic attack. The hotel said the card has been canceled by the cardholder. That's right. There was a pause that I will remember for the rest of my life. It was the pause of a man finally registering that his mother was a person with hands of her own. Mom, what did you do? I revoked your access to my accounts, Beckett. What? Why? Why? Mom, that's our card. We pay for things with that card. That is how we pay for things. Tessa's mom's birthday is in 4 days. We have the whole tour booked already. I know about the appraiser. He did not say anything. I know about the listing going up Monday. I know about the listing going up Monday. I know about the developer in Sonoma and the $4.2 million and Marlene's finder commission. I know about your lawyer Halloran. I know about the line of credit you opened in February without telling me. I know about the joint account. I know about all of it, Beckett. I could hear him breathing. Mom, I want you to listen to me very carefully because I'm only going to say this once. I am 71 years old and I am not dead yet. I have not been dead for 19 years, and I am sorry that I let you and your wife and her mother behave as if I was. That is on me. I should have been paying attention, but I am paying attention now. Mom, please, we can talk about this when we get home. We can. You are not coming home to this house, Beckett. You are coming home to your own house, the one I gave you the down payment for in 2017. You will not be coming up the drive here. The locks were changed yesterday by a man named Vernon, who used to work for your stepfather. The deed is in an LLC that you are not part of. The trust is revoked. The will is rewritten. There is nothing for you to come home to hear except a conversation, and you are not ready to have that conversation yet. You can't do this. I already did it, son. He started to cry then. I want to be honest about how that felt. There was a part of me, the part that nursed him in the upstairs bedroom and walked him to kindergarten and sat up with him the night his father died, that wanted to soften, that wanted to say, "Sweetheart, it's all right, come home." That part of me is still alive. I do not pretend she isn't. But I had her by the wrist, the way my sister had me by the wrist in that hospital room, and I was not letting her speak. "Beckett, you are going to figure out how to pay your hotel bill. You are 44 years old. Tessa's mother has a Scottsdale condo and a Mercedes and a credit score, I assume. You are going to call your wife's family, and you are going to handle it like an adult. And you are going to come home when your ticket says you come home. And you are going to take a long, hard look at the man you have allowed yourself to become. And then, when you are ready, you are going to call me, and we are going to talk. Not about money, about you. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It wasn't supposed to be like that." Tessa and her mom, they kept saying, "I don't care what they kept saying. I don't care what they kept saying. I raised you better than to listen." I hung up. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time after that. The phone rang twice more, and I did not answer. I made myself a piece of toast with apricot jam from a jar Iris had given me, and I ate it slowly, and I watched the morning light come up over the Cabernet block. I want to tell you about the next 6 weeks because the cleanest part of this story is not the phone call. It is what came after. Tessa did not come back with Beckett. She flew from Rome to Phoenix and stayed with her mother for 3 weeks, and then she filed for divorce, which I learned about from a process server who came to my front door looking for my son. I gave the man Beckett's home address in Petaluma and a glass of water and sent him on his way. The developer in Sonoma was contacted by Joelle's office and politely informed that the property was not and had never been for sale, and that any further inquiries would be redirected to council. He apologized. He said he had been told by Marlene's broker that the owner was an elderly widow with diminished capacity who was eager to liquidate. I had Joelle send a letter to that broker. The broker is no longer licensed in the state of California. Marlene, I never heard from again, which is the only blessing in this whole story. Beckett called me on a Tuesday 3 weeks after he got back. He asked if he could come for coffee. I said he could come for coffee. He sat at the kitchen table in the same chair he had sat in since he was tall enough to reach it, and he looked like a man who had lost 15 pounds and most of his hair color. We did not talk about the vineyard. We did not talk about the money. He cried a little and I let him. And I cried a little too. And then we talked about his daughter. Because there is a granddaughter in this story. And I should have told you about her sooner. Her name is Renly, and she is 9 years old, and for the last 3 years, Tessa had been keeping her away from this farm. Too dangerous, Genevieve, with the equipment. Too dirty, Genevieve, you know how she gets with her asthma. Too far, Genevieve, with school. I had not seen my own granddaughter for more than a holiday lunch in 3 years. Beckett told me, that Tuesday in my kitchen, that Renly had asked about me every week, that she kept a picture of the two of us from when she was 5, picking grapes in the Cabernet block in a frame by her bed. That Tessa had told her grandma was sick and couldn't have visitors, which was a lie. He brought her up the following Saturday. She came running out of his truck and across the gravel, and she threw herself against me so hard I had to put a hand on the porch rail to keep upright. And she said, "Grammy, your face still smells like apples." And I cried in a way I had not cried since 1983. She has been here every weekend since. She knows how to prune now. She knows the difference between a Cabernet leaf and a Zinfandel leaf. She has her own pair of work gloves on a hook by the back door, child-sized, pink, embarrassing, perfect. Beckett comes too, most weekends. We don't talk about what he did. We don't have to. He shows up, and he works, and he goes home, and he's rebuilding something inside himself that I cannot rebuild for him. That's his job, not mine. My job is to leave the porch light on. I rewrote the will again last spring. The vineyard goes into a trust at my death, but the trustee is not Beckett. The trustee is Joelle. The beneficiary, for the land itself, is Renly, with a provision that it cannot be sold or subdivided in her lifetime. Beckett gets the house and a stipend. Tessa, of course, gets nothing, and never would have under any version of any document I ever signed if I had been the one writing it. The rest of my estate, the cash, and the investments, I left to a fund Joelle helped me set up. It pays for legal services for women over 65 in Sonoma and Mendocino counties who suspect they are being financially exploited by family members. We named it after my sister. It has helped 14 women in its first year. 2 of them are now sitting in living rooms that are theirs again, holding deeds in their own names with their locks changed. I want to tell you one more thing and then I will let you go. A few weeks ago, I was out at the lower fence line, the one along Iris's property where the wisteria grows so thick. The same fence Tessa and Marlene had stood at, talking about my appraiser, about my acreage, about how Beckett would handle me. I was checking a section of post and rail that had rotted at the base. The sun was going down behind the ridge, and the light was that particular gold you only get in September in this valley. I thought about the woman who had stood on her porch that Tuesday morning and let her son kiss the top of her head and lie to her face. I thought about how tired she had been, how small she had let herself become, how she had been told in 1,000 quiet ways over 1,000 quiet days that the most useful thing she could do for the people she loved was disappear gracefully. That woman is gone. I do not mourn her. I think she would be glad to know that the woman who replaced her sleeps 8 hours a night, watches her granddaughter run between the vines in pink work gloves, and signs her own name on her own paperwork at her own kitchen table. If you are sitting somewhere listening to this, and you are a woman past 60, and something in your gut has been whispering to you for a while now that the people you love are treating you like a problem to be managed instead of a person to be respected, I want you to listen to that whisper. Not next week. Not after the holidays. Tonight. Open the drawer. Read the document. Call the lawyer your sister told you to call. Sit on the floor of the closet if you have to. 71 years is a long time to be alive. It is too long to spend the last of it being quietly robbed by the people who were supposed to love you the most. I am Genevieve, and this is my land, and I am not done yet. I have thought a great deal in the months since that morning on the porch about how a thing like this happens. Not all at once. That is the part nobody tells you. A son does not wake up one Tuesday and decide to sell his mother's vineyard. He arrives there one small surrender at a time, and most of those surrenders are mine. I signed papers I didn't read because I was tired. I let a lawyer named Halloran into my kitchen because Beckett trusted him, and I trusted Beckett, and I had stopped doing my own thinking somewhere along the way. I let Tessa speak about my land in front of me as if I were already a memory. I let 3 years go by without my own granddaughter on my own porch, and I told myself it was modern parenting instead of what it actually was, which was a slow erasure. Every one of those small surrenders was a cause. What happened on that porch was the effect. I do not believe in luck, and I do not believe in fate. I believe that when a woman stops paying attention to her own life, somebody else starts paying attention to it for her, and that somebody is rarely paying attention out of love. Iris saved me by saying the hard thing. My sister saved me, 3 years after she was buried, by leaving me a phone number and a wrist grip I could still feel. Joelle saved me by treating me like a client and not a charity case. But the truth is, none of them could have saved me if I had not been willing to sit on the floor of that closet and look at what I had let happen. That was the moment that mattered. Not the phone call to Beckett, not the new locks, the closet floor. I want to say something to anyone listening who is in the middle of one of those slow surrenders right now. Your goodness is not the problem. Your love for your children is not the problem. The problem is that you have started to believe that being loved requires being small, and being small requires being silent, and being silent requires signing whatever they put in front of you. None of that is true. A child who needs you to disappear in order to love you is not loving you. A child who needs you to disappear in order to inherit from you is not your child anymore in any way that matters until he becomes one again. It took me 71 years to learn that decency is not the same thing as agreement. that intelligence means reading the paper before you sign it, and that strength of will is mostly the willingness to be temporarily unloved by people who never deserved you in the first place. I am still Beckett's mother. I will be his mother the day they bury me. But I am Genevieve first, and I should have been Genevieve first all along.